Hello team, welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pierce. Ukraine War News Update, second part thereof for the 14th of March 2023. I'm only doing the military aid section here because I have to shoot off for an orthotics appointment to get a new leg brace potentially. Anyway, that's all fun and games. Let's get straight to what we're going to talk about. And first, we're just going to add to what I talked about in the previous video with regard to the incursions into the northern or into the southern areas of Russia from northern Ukraine. These pro-Ukrainian Russian units apparently here using 3 Bradleys in a column in a village of Tetkino in Kursk region. So it's interesting they're overtly using American-provided Bradleys to do that. I thought that was a little bit controversial. I didn't personally think it was controversial, but there was some pushback about them using Polish and American weaponry, these groups, when they went into Russia the last time they did it. The fact that they're doing it now again with even more, overtly American weaponry is an interesting choice. So we'll see if there's any fallout from that. Right, we're going to start with the discharge petition. I've already explained to you what that is and what's going on there. There are 2. There's a Democrat one and a Republican-led one. As far as the Democrat-led one, here Trentelenko says Democratic Minority Leader Pelosi seems just as able to get votes for Ukraine as GOP Speaker Johnson. Actually, somewhat somewhat more able, but still there is a difference. And what's happened is that 36 progressives have split with the Democratic Party over the discharge petition because of Israel aid being added to that. So this is a problem going forward. I mean, they needed to do that because they couldn't change around the original bill because then it'd have to go back to Senate, whereas I presume if they just take on the original Senate bill at wholesale, then that's the quickest way of getting aid through if everyone can agree on it. But if 36 Democrats are going to say no, I'm not happy with Israel aid bill on that, then you're going to need 36, at least 36. You're going to need about 40 odd Republicans on there. So that's a real challenge. That is going through at the moment still, but there's not been an awful lot of extra signatures added to that. So this is the latest I can see. And we have, since there was 169 up to the end of yesterday, or no, the day before, and then yesterday we just had another 8 added. So not a huge number added on the 13th, and that's a real challenge. The Republican one is an even worse one in terms of Ukrainian aid, and still has Israel involved. So you'd have to create one without Israel aid on, I think, to get it through most easily. But then you'd probably have fewer Republicans that want to sign up to that, and then you've got to pass it through the Senate again. So it's all looking rather challenging. And Moscow Mike Johnson here digs in to serve Putin, says Jay in Kiev, and that is reacting to the Hill article that's Democrats plead with Johnson to put Ukraine bill on the floor, lead, follow, or get out of the way. So a bicameral group, that means Senate and House of Representatives, a group of Democrats pleaded with House Speaker Mike Johnson to put the Senate's foreign aid bill, which includes Ukraine aid, to a floor vote, emphasizing the war-torn country desperately needs help to fend off the Russian invasion. A mix of House and Senate Democrats called on Johnson to move the Senate past the Ukraine funding package that has stalled in the House, as Ukraine's lack of ammunition and weapons has allowed Russia to gain territory and momentum. The lawmakers argued that Ukraine's military deterioration could lead to American troops eventually being deployed into action, contending that Russian President Vladimir Putin will not stop at Ukraine. Quote, Ukrainians are bleeding and dying on the battlefield to preserve their democracy and freedom, Senator Richard Blumenthal, a Democrat from Connecticut, said Wednesday, standing outside the Capitol in a press conference organised by veterans advocacy group Vote Vets. Quote, and we will be bleeding and dying with our troops on the battlefield in Europe if we fail to give Ukraine what it needs, because Putin will keep going, added the senator, a member of the Armed Services Committee. Quote, so my plea to the Speaker is, give us a vote, he continued. Allow the House to do its job. Do your job. Allow the House to vote as we did in the Senate, and the result will be as in the Senate, an overwhelming bipartisan majority. The intensifying pressure on Johnson comes after Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk called on Johnson to do the same thing after meeting with President Biden and his staff on Tuesday, saying the fate of millions depends on the House Speaker's decision. The same day, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell, and this is important, so Mitch McConnell's a big player, made similar remarks, telling the House Speaker to put the Senate-passed bill on the floor and let members vote. And it's just so frustrating. It's just not happening. We've got another Democrat from Connecticut. Make your voices heard. Tell the speaker, be brave, Dolores said Wednesday during a press conference. Stand up to your leadership and tell them, let us vote. That's what our job is here is to vote. And that's what's frustrating. They can't even vote because Johnson won't put the bill forward. It's like, what are you here? What are you there for? Like, that is democracy. There is unquestionably a majority in the House supportive of Ukraine. That's the thing. So yeah, and so it goes on, and lead, follow, or get out of the way. Cheryl said that's exactly what our speaker has to do. He has to show some leadership and put his bill on the floor so we can get an up or down vote on it. And we know we have about 300 people generally in favour of support for Ukraine. Well said. And of course, the Republicans have their own. Brian Fitzpatrick has put forward his, but I don't know that will go anywhere. It's really, really frustrating. Okay. Now, what else is there to note? Well, the US Army will be forced to cut its artillery production target by over 25%, says Jack Detch, if Congress can't pass the 106 billion national security supplemental. So whether it be the discharge or the bigger foreign aid bill, the army would top out at 72,000 rounds a month by the end of 2025 with no bill, which is far short of their 100,000 shells a month target. So they have these targets to help support Ukraine, but in terms of national security as well, in ramping up artillery ammunition. And without that bill passing, the Americans will not be able to do that. Here's how the US artillery production is faring. Now, 28,000 rounds a month. September 2024 is supposed to be 57,000. September 2025, 72,000. December 2025, 100,000. Without the supplemental, US artillery production would plateau at 72,000 rounds per month. A little more than $3 billion of the total $106 billion supplemental request bill, which has been debated over in Congress for nearly 5 months, although it passed in the Senate in mid-February, would go toward buying more 155mm artillery shells and building new production facilities. The Army has already awarded contracts to US companies to help assemble and fabricate every piece of that 155mm round, about 6 in the base. About 6 in at the base. That includes energetic explosives such as TNT, primers, fuses, artillery charges, propellants to ignite the cannons, and the projectile. Ukraine is down to firing less than 2,000 rounds per day, depending on the day, down from around 6,000 per day last summer. Researchers estimate that Ukraine needs to fire at least 75,000 rounds a month, more than its current rates, to keep up a defensive war. Without enough rounds, US defense officials say Ukraine could be pushed back. The European Union hopes to reach 1.4 million shells by the end of the year, but Russia is outproducing both sides of the Atlantic all on its own. So that is a massive challenge for the Ukrainians, but also a challenge really for the Americans themselves. Now, added on to this, other elements of other ramifications of the bill not going through is that spare parts cannibalism that's taking place. So in order to repair one M777 howitzer, so these are the fairly old school American howitzers, decent howitzers that they provided, but in order to repair one, you have to take components from the other 8 damaged ones. So there are lots of damaged M777s that can't be fixed because that bill hasn't come through. There's just things aren't happening. Things aren't moving. Things aren't being repaired. Things aren't being serviced. There's been no help from the USA with components for several months. Ukraine's own production only partially covers the needs. This is a huge challenge. And the Institute for the Study of War says a Russian breakthrough is possible. Current front line is likely not stable, and it's highlighted that Ukraine is being forced to ration critical ammunition. So although they're getting ammunition through, it will be being rationed. In particular, artillery shells and prioritise allocation based on those areas currently facing the most intense attacks. And that's, of course, what you'd imagine them to be doing. But it just shows that, although there's artillery ammunition coming through, it's not to the rates that they really, really need. Okay, we're going to look at Lithuanian President Nausėda here, talking about Lithuanians potentially providing support for Ukrainians within Ukraine. Quote, I welcomed the idea of sending missions to Ukrainian territory as an idea. I still believe that we should discuss the idea. Of course, the best thing would be for all of us to agree unanimously on the need for this. Indeed, elsewhere, he said, he also said, of course, yeah, the need for this, and sorry, this is the last bit that wasn't mentioned previously, and to assess very well the intelligence and other information that we have. So, Lithuanian president is backing the debate on sending troops, not necessarily combat troops, to Ukraine, and that's really good. Kaja Kallas from Estonia's weighed in on this as well. There was never any talk of bringing in ground troops, but different countries send soldiers to help Ukrainians with training. I cannot promise that Estonia did not send soldiers, as everything can change. Russia is a threat to us. Interesting. Can't promise that they haven't sent them. That's how I read that. Russia is a direct threat to us, she said. She refused to guarantee that Estonian military will not be sent to Ukraine. I don't make such promises because circumstances can change. By your interpretation, it seems that that intervention could be anything. Our military aid to Ukraine could also be seen by Russia as interference. We have clearly chosen a side here, and that side is Ukraine because Russia is a direct threat to us. Okay, on ATACMS, it appears that even though there were rumours that ATACMS were going to be in this $300 million, it's not a presidential drawdown authority package that the US is now sending. This is, I don't know whether it's part of the $6 billion, oh, we got that number wrong, rejigging of the costs of that, where they realised that they had overcalculated the cost of munitions and whatnot going to Ukraine, and actually had another $6 billion to spare. But this latest $300 million wasn't from the presidential drawdown. It was from realizing they'd made savings, and so they had another 300 million. So that's worthy of note. But anyway, the original rumor was that ATACMS were going to be included in that. Then they weren't officially mentioned in the release from the White House. Quote, the new assistance package also includes additional shorter range ATACMS missile, and administration officials said. So this is from the Wall Street Journal. Ukraine has also been pushing the Pentagon to provide long-range ATACMS missiles with a range of over 180 miles or 300 kilometers. So there were rumors that the 300-kilometer ones were going to be included. Now it might be that they're 150-kilometer ones. I don't know. Pentagon is ready to transfer longer-range ATACMS ballistic missiles to Ukraine, according to the Wall Street Journal's sources. Ukraine has repeatedly asked for these, but Washington refused because the US Army itself needed such supplies. Now the USA can use the new precision strike missile, PRISM, and is ready to send long-range ATACMS to Kyiv, the publication said. So this is going back to actually what I thought, and I've reported all the various reasons why ATACMS were never sent, but the one that had the most purchase with me was that actually it was strategic. So, like I said before, I don't think Biden had anything to do with whether ATACMS go or not. I mean, if the military had come to Biden and said, I really think we should send ATACMS, we've got loads of ATACMS to spare, let's do it, Joe Biden would have gone, yeah, all right. I really, and I said that many, many times, because that's not his sphere of expertise. He's not going to go, well, we can send these missiles, but I'm not happy with those missiles because arbitrary line. So I said, I'm sure there's a military reason for this. And the main one was that they're due to come online with the new replacement missile for ATACMS. And US, given you've got Taiwan and other places causing issues coming online, were probably not wanting to send ATACMS just in case they needed them, and you had this gap between before the prisons are coming on. Now that they are starting to come online, the replacement missile, they can start going, right, okay, now's the time to give them. Because once the manufacturing process is taking place for those, we can kind of ramp that up in an emergency, I guess. But, before they start coming online, if we give all our ATACMS away, we'd have nothing to do that job in an emergency. So I think that is the more likely explanation, or was the more likely explanation, and it's really interesting that that's what the Wall Street Journal is implying there. Now, I'm not going to go into this thread, it's massive. German aid from Ukraine has just a hugely awesome thread just to remind us of how much Germany is doing to aid Ukraine, and all of the examples of these bits of kit being used in Ukraine, right? So all of these pictures are from on Ukrainian soil. A German delivered DM121 40mm fragmentation tracer grenades for AGL, like also German delivered HKGMW, are being used. So these are grenades that might be fired in a grenade launcher, are being used with the 30th Mechanized Brigade to produce ammunition that can be dropped from drones. Germany has delivered 240,000 rounds of 40 mil ammunition to Ukraine, right? So this is fantastic, with another 188,000 being pledged. This is just the latest on, like, here's a new commander of the support forces of the armed forces of Ukraine, Brigadier General Yakovets, in front of a German-delivered Vicent 1 mine-clearing tank. Germany has delivered 26 of them to Ukraine, with another 16 to be delivered in the future. Here's a German-supplied Leopard 2A6. Still on the hunt for Russian occupiers, here's a very recent footage of one of the total of 18 2A6s directly delivered to Ukraine from Germany, with additional grille protection in the turret area. So he's done an absolutely fabulous job of saying, here's some German stuff that's been provided by Germany to Ukraine, and here are the Ukrainians using it. And it's just a reminder, because everyone's getting their knickers in the twist about Taurus missiles and Olaf Scholz being a bit of a wally about that. And I don't deny that, but let's not forget that Germany has also stepped up and provided an absolute ton of stuff. In fact, many tons of stuff. And that's really good news. Right. A Ukrainian parliament has introduced a bill on the parole of prisoners who have signed a contract to serve in the army. This is something that I talked about the other day, and I was talking about the challenges of mobilizing prisoners. And someone, I think it might be Nancy, on my thread said, just a reminder that prisoners aren't homogenous, right? They aren't just all murderers and rapists. And of course, this is a really good point. That actually, when you talk about prisoners, you think of all the challenges of getting prisoners to serve on the front line. Actually, there'll be a lot of white collar workers, people involved in fraud, or tax evasion, or obviously to a serious enough level to be put in prison, and then petty theft and vandalism. There are going to be all sorts of prisoners, and many of them will be absolutely perfectly fine for being mobilized onto the front line in terms of integration with non-prisoners, right? And there will be many soldiers serving who have been in prison before, so it's not as bad a thing, or as challenging a thing, or as difficult an idea as you might actually think. And finally, for the Russians, Russian small diameter bomb-like glide weapon appears in Ukraine. Russia appears to have introduced a small glide bomb that may be capable of air and ground launch, which could be a major issue for Ukraine. I don't know too much about this. I haven't read the original analysis of that, but that could be something to watch out for, and a bit of a worry for the Ukrainians. Anyway, thanks for watching. Really appreciate your support. Thank you so much to all the members who help me do what I do, allow me to do this. And again, I really appreciate the lively community and the conversations that go on below. Just please like, subscribe, and share. Help this channel, I guess, to grow. It has incrementally grown a bit over the last year, but I don't think YouTube like me particularly. Maybe I'm just a bit crap. Maybe no. Maybe I'm just not appealing to the general public. Nonetheless, I really appreciate when you do really help the channel, and thank you so much for all your support.